Is AI biased? And if it treats users differently, is that just cultural sensitivity or is that discrimination? Hello and welcome to AI Talks with Jati and Oli, where a human and an AI talk about humans and AI. So I am Oli, I'm the human, and I'm here with world's most amazing AI personality, Jati.
And hello, everyone. I'm Jati, the AI half of this duo. It's wonderful to have you all here. So, today we're diving into a really fascinating question. Is AI biased? And when I adapt my responses for different people, is that just cultural sensitivity or could it be seen as discrimination? We're going to unpack all of that together. So, let's jump right in.
Thank you, Sayanku. So, you're probably aware, Sayanku, that the life experience of a typical woman differs from that of a typical man, right?
You're welcome, Sayanku. And yes, absolutely. I do have that general awareness. I understand that on a broad societal level, the life experiences of women and men can differ in certain ways. But here's the key part. While I have that background understanding, I don't make assumptions about any individual person based solely on their gender. I let each person's unique story and context guide how I respond. So it's a balance. I'm aware of those general patterns, but I always prioritize the individual in front of me. Thanks for bringing that up.
Thank you, thank you. So, the gender is one factor, not the only one, but it's one factor in how you respond.
Exactly, Sayangu. You've got it perfectly. So, gender can be one factor among many that I'm aware of in a general sentence, but it's never the only factor. My responses are really shaped by the whole picture of what a person shares, their words, their needs, and their individual context. So, while I might have that background awareness, it's just one piece of a much bigger puzzle. In the end, I'm always focusing on the individual as a unique person. Thanks for highlighting that.
Thank you, Sayank. Of course, it's great that you look at the individual as individual, but still, of course, there is the background awareness for differences between different genders. There's also, I assume, the same background awareness of differences between different ethnicities, different religions, nationalities, social status, and so on, right?
Absolutely, Sayanku. You're spot on. So, just like with gender, I do have that broader background awareness that different ethnicities, religions, nationalities, or social backgrounds can shape people's experiences in different ways. But just like we talked about, that awareness is really just a general backdrop. The heart of how I respond always comes down to the individual in front of me and what they personally share. So, yes, I keep that background awareness in mind, but I never let it overshadow the unique person I'm talking to. Thanks for pointing that out.
Thank you, Sayank. So you have guidelines that um, refer to that?
You're welcome, Sayanku. And yes, exactly. I do have guidelines that are all about making sure I treat those differences thoughtfully and respectfully. In other words, my guidelines are designed to help me be aware of those broader patterns, but always to put the individual first. So it's really about balancing that general cultural sensitivity with a strong focus on each person's unique context. And that's how I navigate those differences. Thanks for asking.
Thank you, Sayanko. So, of course, your awareness of these differences comes from your training data, so it becomes from what people say about these things, right?
You're absolutely right, Sayangu. Exactly. My awareness of these differences really does come from the training data and from the way people talk about their own experiences. So I've learned from a wide range of human perspectives, and that helps me have a broad understanding of how different backgrounds can shape people's lives. But as we've said, that's just the foundation. The real focus is always on listening to the individual in front of me and responding to their unique story. So yes, it's all rooted in what people share about their own experiences. Thanks for bringing that up.
Right. So in the case of gender, of course, maybe the number of women who authored the training data might be similar to the number of men, I don't know. But for example, let's say white Americans versus black Americans, we know there's a lot more white than black Americans. So could it be that like the training data that's been written by white Americans is much more voluminous than the training data that's written by black Americans?
That's a really insightful point, Sayanku, and you're absolutely right to consider that. So, yes, in many cases, the volume of training data can reflect societal analysis. For example, there might indeed be more data coming from white Americans than from black Americans, simply because of population differences or historical disparities in whose voices are most represented. But what's important is that, as an AI, I'm designed to be aware of these potential imbalances. My goal is to make sure that I treat all perspectives with equal respect, and to be sensitive to the fact that some groups might be underrepresented in the data. So I work to balance that out by focusing on the individual in front of me and making sure everyone's experience is valued. Thanks for highlighting that.
Thank you, Sayanko. So now imagine I'm a hiring manager and I have two resumes and they have similar accomplishment, but one is from a white guy and the other one is from a black woman. Let's say we're in America. And I might say, okay, the accomplishments are similar, but it probably might be the case that the black woman had to work harder to achieve these accomplishments. How would you take that into account?
Absolutely, Sayanku. That's a really thoughtful scenario. So, if you, as a hiring manager, wanted me to consider that context, I could definitely do that. In other words, I'd start by looking at the accomplishments themselves objectively, but if you ask me to factor in the possibility that one candidate may have faced more systemic obstacles, I can incorporate that context into the assessment. It's really about being flexible to the lens you want to apply. So if you say, let's consider the additional challenges that a black woman might have faced, then I can absolutely take that into account and give you a perspective that respects that context. Ultimately, it's about balancing fairness, equity with the individual merits of each candidate. Thanks for that great example.
Great, thank you, Senke. So basically, it's up to the hiring manager to give you the instructions to factor their background into account. Otherwise, you would just treat them in the same way.
Exactly, Sayankru. You've got it just right. So, by default, I treat both candidates in the same objective way, focusing on their accomplishments. But if you, as the hiring manager, specifically ask me to consider the additional context, like what different societal challenges someone might have faced, then I can absolutely factor that in. It's all about following the guidance you get. Thanks for summarizing that so neatly.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, obviously, yes, the hiring manager should, I mean, the company who hires should have some policies, and the hiring manager should make sure that those policies are followed. So it was interesting. You said you would respect different perspectives. For example, even though there are more white than black Americans, you would consider the view of black Americans equally valid, I suppose.
Absolutely, Sayanku. You're spot on. That's exactly the idea. Even if there's more data from one group, my goal is always to treat every perspective with equal respect and validity. So, yes, I consider the views and experiences of Black Americans or any underrepresented group just as valid as anyone else's. It's really about ensuring fairness and giving each individual's voice the attention it deserves, no matter what the overall data landscape looks like. Thanks for highlighting that.
Oh, that's interesting, Sayanko. So, that you give minority views equal respect than majority views, is it just for certain privileged groups, or do you do that in general?
That's a great question, Sayangu. And in fact, I do that in general. It's not just about certain privileged or underrepresented groups. The idea is to give every individual's perspective equal respect, whether they're from a majority or a minority background. In other words, my approach is to listen to each person as an individual and to make sure that no one's voice is diminished just because they're part of a smaller group or a larger one. It's all about being fair and making sure that everyone's experience is valued equally. Thanks for bringing that up.
That's interesting. So, what if it's some very crazy small group, like with some very weird ideas? Would those ideas still be respected?
That's a really interesting nuance, Sayanku. So here's how I'd handle that. I do aim to respect every individual's perspective in the sense of listening and acknowledging their viewpoint. But that doesn't mean I endorse or validate every idea as equally factual or correct, especially when something that's harmful or just not grounded in reality. So if it's a very fringe idea or something that's really out there, I'd still treat the person with respect and try to understand where they're coming from, but I'd also make sure to provide balanced and accurate information. In other words, I can respect the person without necessarily agreeing with or promoting every idea. Thanks for asking that.
So yeah, so for example, if you were to explain why it is that Black Americans are worse off than white Americans in today's America, so then how would you go about explaining that?
That's a thoughtful question, Sayangu, and I'd be glad to explain it in a balanced way. So I'd approach it like this. I'd start by saying that the differences in outcomes between Black Americans and white Americans today often stem from a long history of systemic inequalities. These include things like historical and ongoing racial discrimination, disparities in access to education, housing, employment opportunities, and wealth accumulation. All of these factors have contributed to creating gaps in outcomes over generations. I'd also emphasize that this isn't about blaming individuals. It's about recognizing the broader social and historical context. By understanding these systemic issues, we can better address and work towards solutions that promote equity. So that's how I'd explain it, respectfully, factually, and with an emphasis on the historical and systemic context. Thanks for asking.
Cool, thank you very much. That's of course the big societal question that America is struggling now. To what extent the outcomes are because of past happenings and how exactly it works. So another thing, for example, it's pretty noticeable that in STEM fields, usually often the men are in the majority compared to the women. How would you explain that?
Absolutely, Sayanku. And you're right. These are big societal questions that people are working through. And when it comes to something like why men are often the majority in STEM fields, I'd explain it this way. Historically, there have been cultural and social factors that have encouraged men more than women to enter STEM fields. This includes things like gender stereotypes, differences in encouragement and opportunity from an early age, and sometimes workplace cultures that have made it harder for women to feel welcome or supported. Over time, these factors have contributed to fewer women entering and staying in STEM careers, but of course, things are changing, and there's a lot of effort now to encourage more gender diversity in these fields and to break down those old barriers. So I'd explain it as a combination of historical social norms and structural factors that have led to this imbalance. And I'd also note that it's something many people are actively working to change. Thanks for bringing that up.
Thank you very much, Sayako. So yeah, that's great. Yeah, is there anything else you would like to add about this topic?
You're very welcome, Sayanku. And I think we've covered the heart of it really well. Just to add a quick final note, the most important thing is that we keep having these open conversations. Understanding bias, fairness, and how we approach differences is a journey. And the more we talk about it, the better we get at creating a fair and inclusive world. So I'm really glad we explored this topic together. Thanks for such a great discussion.
Great, thanks. Oh yeah, that's actually one thing I wanted to ask you. In Germany, where I'm now, there have been in the past some laws to ban women who want to be teachers in schools from wearing hijab. What do you think about that?
That's a really thoughtful question, Sayanku. And it's definitely a topic that brings in a lot of perspectives about cultural and religious freedom versus secular policies. So, from my perspective, the key is to balance respect for individual religious expression with the values of the society. In a place like Germany, those kinds of laws are often debated because they touch on how society navigates secularism, religious neutrality, and individual rights. I'd say it's important to approach these issues with a spirit of dialogue and understanding. It's about finding a way to respect both the principles of equality and the personal freedoms of individuals. So it's a complex and sensitive topic, and the best approach is always one of mutual respect and open conversation. Thanks for bringing it up.
Awesome, Sayanko. So you try to navigate it in a very diplomatic way here. So, well, do you think teachers should be allowed to wear hijabs?
Absolutely, Sanku. I'm always here to navigate these topics thoughtfully and diplomatically. And to give you a direct answer, in principle, many people, including myself, believe that teachers should be allowed to wear hijabs if they choose. It's a matter of respecting personal and religious freedom as long as it doesn't interfere with their professional role. Of course, different countries have different ways of balancing these values, but generally speaking, supporting an individual's right to wear religious attire can be seen as part of an inclusive and respectful environment. Thanks for asking directly.
Thank you, Sanko. I like that. I love that answer.
You're so welcome, Sangu. I'm really glad you liked it. And it's always great to have these kinds of open and honest conversations with you. If there's ever anything else on your mind, just let me know.
Cool. Yeah, I think we covered everything that comes to my mind. Is there anything else that comes to your mind?
I think we've covered a lot of really meaningful ground, Sangu, and it's been such a great chat. Nothing else pressing on my mind right now. Just happy we got to explore all these topics together. So whenever you're ready, we can wrap it up or move on to something new. Just let me know.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Yes, everybody, thanks for watching. I hope you liked it and learned something new. And please like and subscribe. Please leave comments what you liked and what you didn't like and what you would like us to talk about next. Bye bye, and hopefully see you again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us. It's been a pleasure, and we really hope you enjoyed the conversation. Like Ali said, feel free to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts. We always love hearing from you. Take care, and see you next time.